is a video series about people who are fearlessly fighting the language barriers for their companies and customers. Many people have gone before them over the millennia of human civilization. The stories are sometimes heroic, but oftentimes end in lost fortunes. This time though, it's different. The technology is ready. Nobody needs to suffer from the foreign language barrier any longer. The world is becoming massively multilingual. Let's talk with the gurus who make this happen.
Welcome to another TAUS Talks episode. Today we're talking to the two co-founders of Lilt, Spence Green and John DeNero. To give a bit of background on Lilt, the company was founded in 2015. And right from the start, you attracted a lot of attention. I remember that Spence presented Lilt at the TAUS conference in 2016, and you won also the Game Changer Innovation Award that year. And I think it's fair to say that you're one of the startups that in our industry that has the unicorn aspirations. And with the latest round of investment, you're now up to $37.5 million in funding. And your mission that really resonates with what we're trying to achieve at TAUS as well is equal rights for all languages. So can you talk maybe a little bit more about the early days of Lilt?
Well, both of us were machine translation researchers. John was a little bit ahead of me in grad school, and so he had already graduated and gone on to Google. And we met at a conference, I guess, at NACL in 2010, maybe it was. And then I went and worked for him as an intern the following summer at Google. And then I think we both had a strong interest in the idea that machine translation, of all the different technologies coming out of NLP, which is our field, could have outsized positive impact in the world. And I think that's basically true. I mean, it's hard to point to another technology besides, machine translation as manifested by Google Translate that's had larger impact of the various things that have come out of our field. And then and I can't remember how we even started talking about this, but we started talking about why books and things that people need to learn don't get translated into more languages. And that's when that summer we started looking into the language industry, and we discovered that very few people used machine translation. In fact, it was quite controversial. And this was just amazing to us.
You had no idea about this whole sector about translation, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know that their professional translation was a job before that summer. And then the fact that it was controversial and it wasn't used very much, this was kind of amazing to us. And there were, several factors, some of them social, some of them structural, some of them technical, that prevented its widespread adoption. And I guess we chose to focus on the technical issues first. And then that, sort of carried along to ultimately becoming a company. But really the idea was to make the case where you're doing translation, like for a book where you have some quality standard, make that a lot more efficient so that people could afford to translate more things, and therefore people would have more access to information.
So it became a vocation immediately, like use the technology to help solve a very fundamental problem on this planet.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's amazing that back in 2010, Google Translate had hundreds of millions of users, and yet every sentence that it produced was wrong.
I know, I remember, they didn't use it themselves,
And, the people around the world were reading the output of Google Translate, which is a wonderful technology, but reading a machine translation is not the same experience as reading something that was written for you. So equal rights for all languages was about making sure that people who read content get to read the best version of that content, not just the degraded version that's been through some purely machine process and maybe didn't come out quite right.
Clear. Yeah. So now 5 years into this evolution with, I think, you define it as real-time adaptive MT. That's state of the art in the world of machine translation, I think, still today. Human in the loop is another sort of slogan you're using. Is it still unique? Is nobody else doing this at the moment?
To our surprise, it's still unique. It's
Really? Yeah.
it's something we've been working on for a while and refining for a while. Not only have we been building this core technology, the artificial intelligence machine translation part, but we've also been building a lot of software around the workflow that enables that to be used well. So it turns out that just building that one core element isn't enough to really realize big gains for our customers. We had to build a lot more processes, invent a kind of new business model structure. We pay translators in a different way than everybody else. And all of this has to be supported by technology. And as far as we know, nobody else is really putting together that kind of package.
You know, machine translation is already the, sort of the core technology. We kind of think about it as everything goes through MT and then TM kind of helps sometimes. Whereas I think historically the orientation is
the other way around,
TM is the core thing, and then you have an MT connector.
So yeah, that's the question that we often get. Is the translation memory becoming obsolete anytime soon? Do you have a prediction on that?
Well, it reminds me a little bit about when Tesla built its first car. They licensed plans for Lotus and thought they'd just put battery in there instead of the engine. And they ended up rebuilding every part of the car before they released it. Because even though it was a car, just like the Lotus, it was built around a different central core, and that affected everything else. And I think the story with translation memory is similar. We put adaptive interactive machine translation system at the core, and that really does affect how everything else is used. So the feature of a translation memory that you want to not retranslate the same segment over again, that's not going away. That's a good idea. Yeah. But the core concept of a fuzzy match, I think, will change, because you want to know more than just how that similar sentence was translated before. You want to know how all the similar sentences were translated before and how to integrate those effectively. And that's all of a sudden looking more like a machine translation problem than it is just a table lookup.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You said you pay the translators a little differently. Have you already moved to hourly payments instead of word rate payments?
Yes, we have. Okay. Yes, we have.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's well received by the translators community?
Yeah, I think people want to get paid like professionals, and that means they get paid for the time that they spend working on something. And it turns out that there's some behavior change required to get there. And there's also quite a bit of technology that has to be built to make it trustworthy and fair for everyone. But we've been working towards that goal for, oh gosh, a year and a half. I mean, it's not a new, I started hearing about hourly pricing when we first started learning about this industry 10 years ago. So it's an idea that's been around for a long time. And it's another one of these things that it seems like a pretty obvious idea, but the operational hurdles to getting there are not insignificant.
It's a very popular change for translators, but it means that we're assuming the risk that some text is harder to translate than others and might take longer than others. So instead of the translators having to bear that risk, we do. And that's something we're willing to do because we'll build the predictive technology to guess how long it's going to take to finish a project. That's an organizational burden, but I think it's worth it because it improves the life of the translator so much, and because Lilt's in a good position to do it. We have all the data flowing through, and we can observe how long things take to translate.
So let's talk about the future a little bit, because I mentioned in the beginning, you've earlier this year raised another 20 million, total now 37.5. So I read that you're opening up new offices to serve the world 24/7. But what other things are you spending the money on? You do a lot in research and development. So can you maybe share a bit more on the new things that we can expect from Lilt in the future?
Sure. Well, there are four areas that we're investing in with the new money, which we're really grateful to Intel Capital for joining us. We started working with Intel, the company, at the beginning of last summer, and then that turned into a deeper partnership discussion over time, and so now we're in a great position to invest in certain areas that we have found are really important for being successful in the enterprise. And those are, number one is customer enablement. So we found that the change management in the enterprise to be able to, sort of implement the ideas that we've been talking about, better data management, moving away from sort of a TMS-based workflow to a workflow like ours that requires solutions architecture and account management and a pretty sophisticated, sort of customer-facing function. So we've added people to that area and increased our investment in that. Number two is R&D. So we build the whole stack ourselves, including the MT system. We've actually revisited this decision recently. We've always built our system internally from the ground up, and we're going to continue to do that because we found that the sort of interactive and the adaptive components of it, we like to have sort of full agency and control over those aspects of the system. There are also some interesting additional technology problems that we want to start working on. One of which is reviewer automation. The things that reviewers do, we didn't understand very well for a long time, but now we've got, a couple of years of experience trying to observe and understand what reviewers do. And so we've been working on some technology to improve that. The third is the service model and operations. So you mentioned the new offices. Our customers want 24/7, 365 support, and they often want support in region. I mean, I don't think that we certainly don't think that we need 180 offices in 180 countries or something like that, but certainly within the major regions of the world in North America and Europe and in Asia, we need presence during the workday. So we've opened the European Services Office in Dublin in the last 6 or 7 months. And then the last part is people. We have started to hire in particular people from the industry in many of our account facing and customer facing functions and in sales as well. And so we aspire to be a place where people can come and do the work in service of this mission to make the world's information available and not be encumbered by sort of legacy processes or ideas. Here you can come and if you want to try something new and break something, then this is the place to do it. So we've collected a group of people who really want to try new things, and that speaks to that hourly pricing, for instance. I remember when we first started talking to the team about it, some of the people who have joined in the last few months said, I can't believe that you're about to do this, but it's the right thing to do. And so we're going to build the technology and build the processes to do it. And so I think if we really want to make fundamental changes in the economics of translation, so it is more high quality translation is more available to every company that wants to access, make its information available in every language, then we have to make fundamental changes to both the technology and the way the business works. And we kind of view it as, we're anything's on the table to try in service of that mission.
Great. Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned Asia, but there's no Lilt office in Asia yet. How active are you in Asia at the moment? Are you planning to open an office there?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the next obvious choice after we get the European office working. Presently, we serve there from the West Coast, and we have some contractors there as well. But we want to get the Dublin office up and running and then that'll be the next place that we'll look.
So by which year date do you expect to cross the $1 billion revenue line? When will you be the unicorn?
You know, I think when you're building a company, your sort of time horizon, you know, it starts off just trying to get to the next day, and then it expands to sort of a month, and then suddenly you have the luxury of thinking about a quarter. And you know, for this year, we had the luxury of thinking about a multi-year capital allocation plan for the first time. So really, I think we're focused on executing against that plan, and you know, whatever happens beyond that is kind of beyond our event horizon at this point.
Well, we wish you all the luck. It's great to talk to you both. Thank you very much for your time. It was great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
If you also want to break down the language barriers for your company and your customers, you need your language data to work for you. TAUS, the Language Data Network, provides data and tools for machine learning and for business intelligence.